April 14th marked my paintiversary, the day I celebrate every year in honor of when I finished my first painting. 4 years ago is when it all started. What began as a way to make a present for a friend has grown and evolved into a wonderful outlet of creativity. It all started with this painting, the first thing I ever made. My sister gave me art supplies one night, and I just threw paint around randomly until I started to finalize an image. It was simple and fun. Without really understanding at the time, this thing I would create held deep meaning to me. A ship alone at sea, perhaps lost, perhaps not. The shadow of the owner reflected still in the water. But that is not where I consider my official start. Around 3 years later, I made new friends while living in the Bay Area, broke and overworked for a little box of a studio apartment. For my friend's birthday, I felt I needed to bring a gift, as I always do. Having no money though, I decided to make a gift and hope for the best. Per their request, I attempted to do this. I never really painted before, other than the boat, but pressure and the need to have a good gift allowed me to try. I went to the party with this. Everyone really loved it, and I think that positive reinforcement helped give me motivation to do more. Of course, knowing me though, if everyone hated it, I probably would have wanted to do better and improve my skills anyway. After that point though, I kept going. My first year was of course characterized by training. I became obsessed with painting and began learning how to do just about everything, mostly through YouTube. This was the first time I was really using YouTube, and I used it as much as I could. YouTube replaced my regular dose of podcasts and audiobooks, and I would use it for any and every trick, learning from and being inspired by creators like Lena Danya, Studio Wildlife, Andrew Tischler, and Brooke Cormier. At the end of the year, I began my tradition of making one challenging painting to commemorate the time past. This was my first ever paintiversary painting. I had just finished a great game, Ghost of Tsushima, and I was inspired to capture the vibe of that game and the idea. So I wanted to have a samurai looking over his land as a protector, allowing the sun to rise once more and shine favorably upon them. I also wanted to add small elements of nature and colors to add the beauty of that day and give the painting a refreshing feeling like I felt while playing the game. For the most part, I was really happy with this piece and was motivated to keep moving forward. My second year could be characterized by aimlessness. As far as skills improving, I was trying to understand why my art looked cartoonish to my eye, or simply couldn't reach heights I saw on YouTube. I knew learning to draw would help, but I was still trying to nail down the fundamentals of painting, and between a very packed life, didn't think I could make more time. As far as the actual artwork was concerned, most of my works that year were random fan art or commissions, a majority of which were pets. During that year, I tried to work with a gaming bar and lounge in the art district of my city to create events for artists and community space. They had events and spaces for basically everything else, so I didn't really see the harm. In preparation, I worked on a series of fan art pieces to be hung in the space, anticipating success. And while the lounge decided against doing anything, since one of those three owners apparently hates paintings or art in general, I still managed to get wall space at my gym next door. My second paintiversary coincided with this time, so my project was the biggest canvas I had ever worked on, being 40 by 30. And since it was for nerd stuff, one of my favorite movies at that time was Across the Spider-Verse, Miles and Gwen being my favorite characters. I already planned to dress for Miles for Halloween later on, so this piece was dedicated to Gwen. With all this space, I felt I could try something a little more ambitious than my normal work, and I tried to capture the general vibe of the character. And I split into this day and night side, her normal life and then her superhero life. And for the day side, I picked a scene from the movie that I thought really characterized everything about her in one image. She's this blue character amongst all the warm colors, cold and alone. And since everyone else is sort of fading in and out of existence, she's the most detailed. And it kind of expresses just how much of an outlier she is in this world. You know, she's always alone, and no one can really understand her. And on the other side, I just want to contrast that, show that duality of lives. As a superhero, she's the warmest color in the night. And then, of course, both of them are sort of walking in the same path, reflecting each other, because they're the same person, you know, just two different lives. This painting, from what I remember, was an incredibly long process of several hours of work for 2 weeks straight, and made me develop a fear, or perhaps just a strong aversion to buildings. I do love the finished product though. Between this and the Last of Us painting, I felt very accomplished at the end of my second year. For my third year, I started trying to branch away from fan art because you can't legally sell it. And besides, I also want to just make my own things. I think this year, I'd say I begun taking painting more seriously, the same way I sort of treated my writing. It was during this year I made a website to sell works. To this date, I've only sold one painting, and it was also this year that I studied my craft beyond the technical side, as in learning art history and really trying to connect with the painters of the past. In doing so, I blended my favorite little pug, Appa, with trying to understand how past painters made their works and what they were thinking about when doing so. And I think that's really the amazing thing about a piece of art. Someone created and made decisions about each and every brushstroke. And on top of that, if you're trying to understand that, it's sort of like you're connecting with the past and these artists. A one little connection through time. And that mindset of viewing these works allowed me to create these pieces. Of course, this isn't what I used for my third year paintiversary. Instead, the Weaver of Life was a little tough for me to put together because I knew the elements I wanted to have, but I didn't really know how to assemble them. This was my best attempt at getting a person weaving the webs of all of creation with the trees, river, fish, birds, etc. all forming around her as she pulls on these puppet strings. And then for a last note, I wanted a skull subtly in her head as a sign that life creates death, and such that the Weaver of Life would also be the Weaver of Death. This painting challenged me because, look, I'm not great with people. I enjoy nature, I enjoy dogs. People usually came out too cartoonish and unrealistic. That's why I thought the pressure would help me like usual, and I do think most of it was good. But it just didn't really have that spark factor I was looking for. I thought it was nice, but not overly special, and not something I could think I would find success selling. Still though, it wasn't the worst way to end my third year. And now, for this past year, the fourth year, it certainly started with a bang. The theme of this year was really looking for my own art style while continuing to learn about art history. A lot of the year was experimentation. I kicked off the year by creating the centerpiece for my Puggy Classics series, which is now one of my favorite paintings ever. The Rococo style is about being playful and having more dreamlike and fun scenes, so I pugified one of my favorite paintings by Fragonard, which is The Swing. I adore this painting. I love the story behind the real one. I love the pugs. I love the dog holding a bone in place of and I love doing this painting. After this one, I explored experimenting with these dots to try and capture a photographic noise texture the way I would add stars in space. I hoped it would add a layer of nostalgia and perhaps make something look more realistic by forcing your eyes to fill in the gaps. It did work for a painting I tested, but it doesn't always work, and the more I used it, the more ways I'm learning how to use the interference pattern to blend, or add a local color, and just a bunch of other stuff. And while I hope doing this could become some sort of hyper pointillism style, I think it'll more likely just be another one of my tools. But this year I also explored a lot of other styles, especially for Inktober, where I made a painting every day. Sume Japanese art was a big interest of mine this year, so I bought a grindstone and learned how to actually make the paintings the proper way, as well as how to make ukiyo-e paintings, which I would love to do one day, to make them properly and do the wood carving prints, but my god, that is a complicated process, and I need to learn Japanese and go to Japan and learn from a master to really figure that out. I also tried Art Nouveau, which is another style I really enjoy, and add a little more fan art to my collection. To round out my year, I made 2 more puggy works, like Puggy Meninas and The Great Pug Hunt, which was crafted from the dirt in my backyard, and some acrylic medium, so mostly caveman style. And then I did 2 repaints, one of them being my new favorite paintings, and we have the Tulips remastered, and then we also have Sanctuary. I finally, for this one, explored the ideas I felt was missing in my first attempt, and I instantly fell in love with this new version. But my year didn't end there. For the grand finale, I challenged myself with something more abstract in nature, and I'm not much of an abstract painter, so to me this was more of a challenge. This is a picture of the sun captured by astrophotographer Andrew McCarthy. It looked like something impossible and majestic, and being limited on ideas, I figured I'd give it a shot at trying to interpret on canvas, hoping to still capture the power of what I see, or what I saw. The idea was similar to the previous year, since the sun I view as this great bringer of life. I want to capture its majesty and energy, and while I'm not religious, I think of the sun as a metaphor for God, hence the name of this piece, the Eye of God. And I mean, Egyptian society literally had Ra, the god of the sun, sort of symbolize the exact same thing, so it's not like I'm off base for hanging you there. But I figured no one would get my Queens of the Stone Age reference if I named it My God is the Sun. Oh well. So 4 years amounted to this painting. I used my knowledge of Impressionism, Pointillism, and Expressionism to balance the separation of the streaks and capture the flow of fire and energy. My experience with acrylic gave me the ability to really think in terms of how to layer, and my application of dots that went back to year 1 of space paintings helped me lighten and darken areas. My eyes helped me understand how to make bits of depth, and all of it culminated in making this piece to capstone my 4 years as a painter. And I am very happy with how this one turned out. All that being said, where I go from here is a mystery. In truth, I haven't gotten a commission in a long time, and am not making any money off my art. With money being tight and me being forced to move back in with my parents, I need to actually make money. And while I'm very proud of how far I've come as a painter, I don't see myself committing much time to painting for the foreseeable future. I do too much, and I'm actively writing 2 books simultaneously right now. I need to devote much more time to my greatest passion instead of just a great passion. I feel for both I fall into the trap of creating, and not really learning how to sell or market my work. I'm only now, after 10 years of writing, trying to learn how to get around the trap of traditional publishing. And doing that is making me look for all the ways to sell my paintings without a social media following or anything like that. While in person I'm a fairly good talker, I'm pretty terrible about social media and online stuff. Like, pretty terrible. I don't like it. And I'm really bad at fairs as well, because I don't have small things for people to buy, and no one's really about to shell out hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for a painting at a fair. So until I can learn how to make a consistent business of my paintings, I'm putting painting aside for now. I will, however, start devoting smaller chunks of time to becoming good at drawing, so I can one day make works purely from my imagination. I do love painting, and I think I've come a long way in 4 years, but if I can't make money, I can't have the leisure of making paintings. Canvases cost money, paints cost money, making the work costs time. Hopefully I figure it all out one of these days, but that day is not now. However, one thing I've always wanted to do as a writer and a painter is find some way to give back to the community. My goals for both writing and painting are fairly lofty and require a consistent enough source of income, which I'm obviously lacking right now. So in lieu of those two goals, I still want to find some way to give back to my community in whatever way I can. In these times where everyone is self-interested and money is incredibly tight, I believe community and spreading our wealth and blessings is how we can get ahead and break free from the constraints of traditional institutions that only see artists as a product, devaluing our creativity and passion. I have some ideas in that regard for how I might be able to achieve that using YouTube amongst other things. And even if no one's really watching my channel, people don't read my books either, so screaming into a void is one of my specialties. And I'll keep experimenting and hopefully find some way to shine the spotlight on my contemporaries so that we might all get noticed together. One podcast I used to listen to always said, we rise by lifting others. So I do firmly believe that, and I want to see if there's some way I can do my part in that regards. For now, though, I'll see you next time.